get it. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the SchuZ Show. I'm your guys' host, SchuZ Schumaker. I hope you guys have had a phenomenal Friday so far. But with that being said, we're going to get into what is going to be a phenomenal show today. So before I go any further, if you guys have any topics you guys want me to address on today's show, or if you guys want to share your predictions on the upcoming fights going down tomorrow on July 19th, make sure to leave them in the chat, and I will address those and talk about them as I go throughout tonight's show. Now, obviously, I talked about Bruce Carrington was going to be on the show today. He had to postpone. We're going to have him back on the show right after his fight now. Obviously, next week will be fight week for himself. He'll be on the show the week after his fight to break down what goes down, and hopefully at that point in time, he will be the interim world champion. So he'll be on the show in about a week and a half now. But before I go any further, let's just get into the show with this. We have been talking about July 19th for a very long time. When the date started trickling out for Daniel Dubois, Oleksandr Usyk at first. And then we started hearing about Phumelela, Cafu and Ben Rodriguez fighting. And then we started hearing about Manny, Pacquiao, Barrios. July 19th has been the date that boxing fans and fight fans overall, because UFC will be going down tomorrow in Dustin Poirier's final fight of his career, for a very long time. And all of a sudden, I look at the calendar right now. It is July 18th. Tomorrow, July 19th, will feature an incredible day of fights. You looking at the headlining fights in and of themselves. Oleksandr Usyk, Daniel Dubois. We will have an undisputed heavyweight champion of the world this time tomorrow night. Manny Pacquiao makes his historic return at the age of 47, facing Barrios once again for a world championship. Phumelela, Cafu and Ben Rodriguez will unify their 115 belts tomorrow night. You have Sebastian, Fundora, Tszyu having their rematch going down tomorrow as well. And as I said, for UFC fans, you also have Dustin Poirier fighting Max Holloway for the BMF belt in Poirier's final fight of his career. July 19th has a chance to be the greatest day of combat sports this calendar year. Now, we'll see if it lives up to it, but that's what we have in store for tomorrow on Saturday, July 19th. And my job today is that we're going to get into all the fights in boxing going down tomorrow. And how could I possibly not start this topic off other than discussing the main fight going down tomorrow at Wembley Stadium between Oleksandr Usyk and Daniel Dubois? This fight is going to be incredible. You know, it is kind of wild when you think about it that we're going to have a stadium filled out at Wembley Stadium tomorrow that does not involve Anthony Joshua nor Tyson Fury. For a very long time, those two have been the guys that have headlined the UK fights. But now we have Daniel Dubois. And I want to just give you guys a little preview of this fight. But before I go into the preview and break down the fight in and of itself, I just want to point something out real quickly. I talked about the fact about Oleksandr Usyk, that you can make a debate that if he wins tomorrow, becomes two-time undisputed heavyweight champion of the world, that we're looking at a man that would have the resume, at least, of one of the greatest boxers ever. Of course, one of the greatest heavyweights, but one of the greatest boxers, period. But I haven't necessarily dove into Daniel Dubois yet. And I want to spend some time on this. Daniel Dubois is 27 years old. He has already fought Oleksandr Usyk in his career and obviously had the very controversial loss to Usyk in that fight. But he has now since rebuilt himself and put him in position to become undisputed heavyweight champion of the world at just the age of 27 years old. There has been a massive problem when we look at under 30 guys at the heavyweight division. It seems to be that this era, the future of heavyweight boxing, has been a little bit in shambles recently. There's not been a clear superstar. Now, Mosey Thomas certainly rising, but there's been a lot of uncertainty in terms of who that next superstar is. If Daniel Dubois can go out there tomorrow and execute, and I think he's going to have to win by knockout if he decides to win against Oleksandr Usyk. But if Daniel Dubois goes out there and pulls off the upset against Oleksandr Usyk to become undisputed champion of the world at just 27 years old, we will be looking at a man who is not only the future of boxing, but the present star of boxing. The overall name of Daniel Dubois will go from a guy that most boxing fans know to all of a sudden one of the biggest stars in boxing overnight. That is what could possibly be in store for Daniel Dubois, and rightfully so. This is a man that at the age of 27 could now become the new face of the heavyweight division in boxing. And that is a huge thing because, like I said, for a very long time now, the heavyweight division has been in shambles. We have been uncertain as to what will happen in the heavyweight division going forward after, the Tyson Fury, Anthony Joshua, Oleksandr Usyk, Deontay Wilder, so on and so forth era. This could be the new face of the boxing era of the heavyweight division. That's why tomorrow is so significant for him. He could not only become the next British superstar, but the next boxing superstar overall if he goes out there and executes tomorrow. Now let me break down what we have in store for this undisputed heavyweight title fight. Oleksandr Usyk is carrying a 22-0 record, 14 KOs. He will be bringing into that ring his WBA, WBC, WBO, and IBO belts in this fight. And as well, the ring heavyweight titles, all against the IBF champion, who is Daniel Dubois. This will be a fight going down at Wembley Stadium. Daniel Dubois, to remind you guys, is 21-2 with 20 KOs in this fight. Usyk has already been undisputed. Now, he's going to be undisputed at heavyweight. He's been that as well. He's been undisputed at cruiserweight. Now he looks to become two-time heavyweight undisputed champion of the world. This will only be the second time we will have an undisputed world champion at heavyweight in 25 years. He is coming off of back-to-back wins against Tyson Fury, and he wants to unify the belts once again. As for Daniel Dubois, he rebounded from his 2023 loss to Usyk with massive wins over Filip Hrgovic, Anthony Joshua, Jarrell Miller, so on and so forth. And that Anthony Joshua fight nearly 1 year ago is what landed him the IBF title. All right. When we talk about this fight, this is one of the good old heavyweight storylines of big-time guys that are heavy punchers, KO power, being Daniel Dubois. Explosive, strong jab. Great composure under pressure. He's gotten a lot better at that at least, but he's a man that's going to want to go out there and brawl. As for Oleksandr Usyk, that's not quite his style. He has the capability, sure, but for Usyk, this is a man who is one of the most skilled heavyweights of this era. He's a master technician, incredible footwork, one of the best ring IQs in all boxing right now. Truly, he is an incredible mastermind when it comes to breaking down bigger opponents. That's how he's gone from cruiserweight undisputed champion to become the king of the heavyweight division. Usyk is rightfully so a top 3 pound-for-pound fighter in the world, and in many people's opinions, he is number 1. So how does this fight go down? Well, we saw in the first time it ended in controversy. Many people sided on the fact that Daniel Dubois landed a low blow on Usyk, and others say that was a clean shot. Now, what ends up happening in fruition is obviously that Usyk gets 5 minutes to recover. He takes full advantage of that. He goes on to then beat Daniel Dubois. This time around, we'll see what happens. But if I were to make this decision here, Daniel Dubois will only be able to win this fight if he lands it by KO. When we go back to the Anthony Joshua fight, I say this every single time. People seem to write off Anthony Joshua way too early, in my opinion. I get the hate towards him, whatever, so on and so forth. But in that fight, Anthony Joshua got clipped. Daniel Dubois had a great shot land him, and he made Anthony Joshua have to go into recovery mode right out the gate. And when we saw Anthony Joshua recover a little bit there, right before he ended up getting KO'd, he got Daniel Dubois to be a little bit hurt. He got him stunned. But obviously, Daniel Dubois had another miracle shot, and that's the one that does the finishing touches on Anthony Joshua. My point in that is this. Daniel Dubois is going to have a very similar game plan when he goes out there and fights Oleksandr Usyk. He's going to have to go for broke right out the gate. His game plan needs to be get out there and stop Usyk and at least land something on him to hurt him. Because he's not going to be able to dance around with Usyk. He's not going to be able to out-technique him. He's not going to be able to do any of that. Dubois' only game plan in this fight is to go land the big land and the big punch on Usyk. If he can get him stunned early on and then work off of that, that's going to be his biggest way to victory. Do I see that being what happens in this fight? No. I personally think that Usyk will be able to avoid the big Daniel Dubois punches. I think Daniel Dubois for sure will have good moments. But I think Usyk will end up coming to fruition and win this fight by decision tomorrow. That's my overall guess here. However, as I said, Daniel Dubois is a guy, as we just witnessed about a year ago against Anthony Joshua. He is more than capable of landing that big shot. And if he does that, we could be looking at having potentially the next superstar in boxing formed. That would make Daniel Dubois undisputed champion of the world at 27 years old and have one of, if not the greatest win that you could have on your resume at this point in boxing. That win against Oleksandr Usyk would solidify you as one of the biggest wins in boxing, probably of this generation. That would be a monumental win. But his only way of accomplishing that is by way of KO. So if you're Daniel Dubois, you know you're going to have to go for the last few rounds. You know it's going to be a long, drawn-out fight. But if it gets to round 12 and you are not winning and Usyk's not KO'd, and this fight goes to scorecards, there's a very good chance that he's going to lose this fight. That's why Daniel Dubois has to go for broke right out the gate and go for the win. You need to look to find a way to clip him. I think that's exactly what Daniel Dubois will do. I think we're going to have a very similar, although there'll be changes, but a very similar game plan to how he executed against Anthony Joshua, because that's his biggest way to go out there and win this fight. Let me know your guys' thoughts in the comment section. Who do you guys have winning the Oleksandr Usyk Daniel Dubois rematch going down tomorrow? I want to see what you guys think on that one. Let's now head over to the other big world championship fight going down tomorrow. It's the unification of the WBC and WBO super flyweight titles between Jesse Bam Rodriguez and Phumelela Cafu. Bam Rodriguez is a man that's regarded by most as a top 6 or 7 pound-for-pound fighter in the world. Maybe you have him higher, but he's right in that mix. This is a man who is 20-0 with 13 KOs in his career. He wants to unify the belts. Phumelela Cafu is 15-1 with 9 KOs. This fight will be going down in Frisco, Texas. All right. Let me just point this out. Bam Rodriguez, I've already talked about this. This is a man who, with the current record he has set for himself, has a legitimate chance at becoming a man who is the possibly number 1 pound-for-pound fighter in the world in about 18 months or so. That's the type of guy we're looking at. Bam Rodriguez has the whole package. He is powerful, he has skill, he has everything. Everything you need in boxing to be great. Bam Rodriguez possesses just that. We're talking about one of the rising stars in all boxing when you look at Bam Rodriguez. What he has accomplished at his age is exceptional. He is a true star. This is a man that wants to go for undisputed at 115. He already has another big fight lined up for later this year, which I've already questioned that a little bit, but it is what it is. It all comes down to tomorrow. And Bam Rodriguez will be facing a man in Phumelela Cafu, who most people have already written off. And I'll just get this out of the way right now. Yes, I see Bam Rodriguez winning this fight. If I had to put money on it, that's where I'm putting my money on. But I want to make this very clear. Phumelela Cafu is a man who has already been the underdog in countless fights before in his career. Most recently, his most recent fight. When he went out to Japan, in enemy's territory, fought Kosei Tanaka, and pulled off a master performance in that and being able to pull off a master class in terms of having to have one of the biggest upsets of the year last year. That was not an upset that many people expected him to come out there with victory. But yet Phumelela Cafu went out there and excelled in that fight. Some people might question that, but listen, this is a man that's already gone through being a massive underdog in fights and coming out victorious. Now, this is far and away the biggest fight of his career. I'm not going to compare Kosei Tanaka to Bam Rodriguez. My point in that is this. A lot of times when we look at guys that are superstars in boxing, or at least rising stars as Bam Rodriguez is, there's a lot of, you might call it aura that goes on in the ring. There's a certain guy that has a certain stigma about him that is powerful. We know who he is. And a lot of time we see fighters fear those guys. I don't feel like that's going to be the case for Phumelela Cafu. When Cafu goes into the ring tomorrow, I don't think there's going to be any fear in him. This is a man that goes out there and I think he believes he truly will win this fight. I think he truly believes he will pull off the upset of the year. He said it on this show. He said it many times before. Now, will it happen? I personally will pick Bam Rodriguez in this fight. But as I've said time and time again, writing off Phumelela Cafu is not a wise decision. He has been the underdog before and that will not face him. So let's break down this fight more specifically now. Bam Rodriguez is one of the biggest stars. Already 2 division champions. He's beat Estrada. He's bought Karadas. He's fought and defeated Sonny Edwards. For Cafu, I just talked about his most recent fight to get his world championship was against Kosei Tanaka. Now for Bam Rodriguez, he's a southpaw, slick footwork, great counters, elite timing, as I said, the full package. For Cafu, this is a man that's going to want to exchange in the middle. This is a pressure fighter, great body work, and he's very confident when he gets into the exchanges. And that is why I believe that tomorrow has a chance to be one of the most entertaining fights of the year. These two guys are going to want to exchange. We know Bam Rodriguez knows what he's capable of doing. Now, Bam has the full package as well. Let me not get that twisted up in the messaging here. But Bam Rodriguez likes to go out there, stand in the center of the ring, and exchange with guys. We've seen him do it before. This could be a this could be one of the most exciting fights of the year tomorrow between these two guys. Bam is going to be eyeing a Fernando Martinez fight later on this year. We'll see if that comes to fruition. It all hinges on what happens in tomorrow's fight. But Cafu wants to prove that this is not just a fluke win that he had against Tanaka. So what do I see in this fight? I believe that mid-round, Bam Rodriguez will come out victorious. I believe this is going to be a fight where Bam Rodriguez will solidify himself, have 2 of the belts now, and unify those in 115. And I think this is going to be a fight where Cafu will be punished early on. Bam Rodriguez will take over, and we'll see what happens at that point in time. But my overall guess in this fight, Bam Rodriguez by KO, mid-round stoppage. As I said, Cafu might possibly scrape out a win or 2 in one of the early rounds. But that pressure will eventually wear down. Bam Rodriguez will take over in that fight, utilize his full arsenal, and get Cafu out of there. However, as I said, do not write Cafu off. He has proven people wrong many times in his career, and it would not shock me if he does that tomorrow because he is extremely confident. And a confident man in that ring is always a scary sight to see. Let's head over to what's going to be the co-main event on the Bam Rodriguez Cafu card. And this is what I think could possibly be the fight of the night tomorrow. And I know it's a big, bold statement to make. When we're looking at the entire list of fights going down on July 19th, this could be the fight of the night. Diego Pacheco versus Trevor McCumby. Super middleweight clash. Diego Pacheco is one of the top rising stars in America. He is a future champion, I think, and the world champion, I should say. This is a man that's 23-0, 20 KOs. Trevor McCumby is 27-1 with 18 KOs. This will be for a WBC title limiter at 168. When you look at this, I think a lot of people will say, okay, Pacheco is going to go out there and win this fight easily. No. It will not be easy. Trevor McCumby gave Caleb Plant everything he could handle in their most recent fight. Now, obviously, we have the next fight that follows up for Caleb Plant. Resendez goes out there and pulls off the upset of the year on Caleb Plant. But Trevor McCumby dropped Caleb Plant in that fight. Trevor McCumby gave Caleb Plant a lot of issues in that fight. This is a man that is a very battle-tested veteran. He is very exciting to watch. I think he's very entertaining to watch as well. Anybody that knows him knows he's a very exciting fighter to watch. And he's going to be able to push Pacheco to his limits. This is a guy that's not going to back down. He's not going to do any of that. He's going to be standing in that pocket. He's going to fight, put on a show for the fans. And that's going to be very tough for Pacheco. Last time out, Pacheco fought Steven Nelson, which was also a pretty good fight overall. Now, Nelson got that cut. I think that hindered him a lot. Now, when I break down this fight, we're looking at Pacheco. He is a guy who is ranked in the top 3 by multiple bodies. He is a guy that I believe will be a future world champion regardless of what happens tomorrow. Whether that's a win, he could be fighting for a world championship in the near future. A loss, he'd have to rebuild, but he will be a world champion in the future. McCumby is a very dangerous fighter, though. He's extremely tough, aggressive, very strong, and has a good inside game as well. Now for Pacheco. He has long reach advantage. That's going to be his biggest thing for him. He's very patient pressure, and he has devastating body shots. He loves to go to the body. That's what I think his game plan will be. Go to the body of McCumby and see how McCumby can hold up when you go to the body. What do I think is going to happen in this fight? It's interesting. For Pacheco, we already know that this is a man that needed a step-up fight. We were rumoring Christian Billy. That fight was never going to happen now. Could it happen in the future? Possibly. But McCumby's last shot will be for a world championship at least. It's pretty much going to be tomorrow. This could be his case to break into the top 10. I believe that McCumby is a very strong fighter. I think he's going to give us everything, give Pacheco everything he can handle. If I had to make a prediction right now, I do see Pacheco edging him out by decision tomorrow. That's how I see it happening. But let me say this. This is probably one of my least bold predictions I'll make on this fight card for tomorrow. Because when I look at Trevor McCumby, this is a guy who once again does not back down. He gave Caleb Plant everything he could handle in that fight. He dropped Caleb Plant. He pushed Caleb Plant to his limits and gave the fans one of, if not potentially even the fight of the year last year. I think he will do the exact same. And when we look at the two different guys, Pacheco does not have the experience that Caleb Plant had when they fought last time. Pacheco in this situation is going to be stepping up. And I think Trevor McCumby could push him and give him everything he could handle tomorrow. So McCumby could very well come out victorious tomorrow. That would not shock me in this fight at all. Let's go to the other world championship fight. All right. In Las Vegas for the WBC welterweight title fight, Mario Barrios versus Manny Pacquiao. When this fight first got announced, I gave my thoughts on it, and I was very clear. I don't think this fight should happen. Now, I never said that per se to say that Manny Pacquiao is trash, so on and so forth, that he doesn't necessarily deserve it. My thing has always been, listen, if I'm Manny Pacquiao, I don't want him to get seriously hurt. You are 47 years old, and that's a 47 years old that's gone through some brutal, brutal fights. I know you love fighting, but you always have to put down the gloves at some point and move on. That's been my stance all along. He's already in the Hall of Fame. He's one of the greatest to ever fight. He is a legend. He does not need to step back in the ring, and that's been my take all along, and that still is my take to this point in time. I love Manny Pacquiao. He's a God-fearing man. He's a great person. He is a man that I love to root for. I love him, and I know some people got confused when I was going out there early and making all these claims about not wanting this fight to happen. I absolutely do love Manny Pacquiao. He is a legend. If you love boxing and you don't like Manny Pacquiao, I don't know how that's possible. He is the guy that defines some of the most entertaining fights in boxing history. He's the guy that gives it his 100% effort. And he's fought some brutal, brutal fights in his career. And that is why I've always made this claim, this entire build-up process, that listen, if this was a man that just never got touched his entire career, fine. But this is a man that's given the fans some of the greatest fights that we've seen. He has gone through some serious damage, and yet he has not won a fight since 2019. He has given us everything. He doesn't owe anybody anything else. To see him back in the ring is something that I do not like to see at all. Hopefully he makes it out healthy tomorrow. That's my hope. But that's my thoughts on that situation. Now let's break down this fight overall. Mario Barrios is 29-2 with 18 KOs. He'll be defending his WBC welterweight title against Manny Pacquiao, who is 62-8-2 with 39 KOs in Las Vegas. I will say this. If you are Manny Pacquiao, and I heard there's rumors, I'm not sure if this has been confirmed or not, but there's been rumors now that Manny Pacquiao's wife was the one that chose Barrios for him to come out here and fight. Not sure if that's accurate, but that's supposedly the truth right there that's come out. And listen, she's a smart woman if that's the case. Out of all the champions in boxing, not even at welterweight, out of all the champions in boxing right now, you could make a legitimate case that Mario Barrios might be the easiest champion to beat. This guy is a very entertaining fighter. He loves to exchange. He's a warrior. But he has some lackluster skills. Defensively, not the best. Abel Ramos, you could debate how that fight even went when they fought on the Mike Tyson-Jake Paul undercard last year. This is a guy that is fine, but he's nothing special. And if you're Manny Pacquiao, this fight just kind of fell right into your lap. So let's break it down. For Barrios, he's a former super lightweight champion. Now at 147, he's got wins against Usyk, also Crowley. Pacquiao, he's returning from retirement. He's the active Hall of Famer. He's looking for a world title in a fifth decade, which will be one of the most remarkable accomplishments if he can actually manage to do that. Barrios is obviously tall, rangy, disciplined jab, and solid bodywork. Prime Pacquiao has great speed, angles, explosive, furious, unmatched experience, so on and so forth. We know he's one of the greatest of all time. But that's the big deal about this fight. That, who I just described, is Prime Pacquiao. If we're talking about Prime Pacquiao fighting this Mario Barrios, I have to laugh at that one because Manny Pacquiao would get him out of there so quickly, it'd be insane. But this is late 40s Manny Pacquiao. This is Manny Pacquiao far removed from his prime. This is Manny Pacquiao who has not won a fight since 2019. This is Manny Pacquiao who did not look good whatsoever in any of his exhibition fights, most recently in his exhibition fight last year. He would be the first fighter to be a world champion post Hall of Fame induction. And for Barrios, he wants to have this name on his resume. How do I see this fight going down tomorrow? I made this clear the other day. If you're Mario Barrios, you need to make sure, under every circumstance, that you win this fight by KO. And there's no reason you don't do that. Because listen, with the rumors of the Floyd Mayweather-Manny Pacquiao fight currently going on, this fight, that fight right there has so much money on the line that if it goes to decision, I'm just going to be honest, it is hard for me to imagine that Manny Pacquiao would not emerge victorious in that situation. So if you're Mario Barrios, you better make sure that you get Manny Pacquiao out of there. And I hate to see that, but that's just a fact. You do not want to go to decision against Manny Pacquiao with this situation. If his legs hold up, if his speed and volume, Manny Pacquiao obviously will go out there and win. I just don't see that happening. When you're talking about Manny Pacquiao, this is a man who did not look good in his exhibition fights. This is a man who has not won since 2019. That is 6 years ago. That is why my prediction on this fight is that Mario Barrios will win by KO. Hopefully Manny Pacquiao makes it out healthy. It's not a serious injury. But if you're looking at Manny Pacquiao in the situation tomorrow, this is a fight that is not going to be easy for somebody at his age. Hopefully he holds up all right. But that's my thoughts on that fight right now. But let me know in the comment section real quick in the chat. Who do you guys have winning out of all these fights? For Manny Pacquiao and Mario Barrios, who do you guys have winning? Let me know your guys' thoughts, and I'll make sure to address that as well as we go throughout today's show. Let's over to the undercard for Manny Pacquiao and Mario Barrios. And this will be heading over to Sebastian Fundora, Tszyu for the WBC Super Welterweight World Title. This is a rematch from what happened in the bloody fight from last year. Fundora, 21-1-1, 13 KOs. He'll be defending his belt against Tszyu, who is 24 wins and 17 KOs in his career, in a rematch of the 2024 clash. Now, for anybody that remembers what happened last time, this was a fight last year that was one of the most bloody fights of the year. Absolutely insane fight. That fight obviously resulted in the brutal cut for himself, and that led to Tszyu's first career loss in that situation. Then Tszyu obviously fought Bakram later on, lost that fight as well, making a second career loss. But for Tszyu, he had a good bounce back win just a little bit ago. Now, it wasn't against anybody good, but it was a good bounce back win. I struggle in this situation. Sebastian Fundora is one of the tallest champions in all boxing, and yet he's fighting at 154. The Towering Inferno, for a reason. His height, freakishly height, will allow him to be able to fight on the inside, outside, and help win him the fight against Tszyu. Tszyu's not a big guy either. He is quite small, and that could put him in danger of getting another cut again. We'll see what happens there. Make sure to watch for scar tissue, because if that scar opens up again, Tszyu could be in for a world of trouble once again. But when we date back to the very first fight, Tszyu was winning the early rounds. He was looking phenomenal. But when you have a gash on your head the way it looked like before, that was never going to be a fight that Tszyu could emerge victorious in. Now that we look at this point in time, the big situation is, can he avoid the cuts again? You don't want all the scar tissue to open up. That's going to be a worrisome thing to look out after. But for Tszyu, he obviously is a great fighter. Let's get into the specifics here. Tszyu obviously a compact fighter. He has compact power, sharp counters, strong body attack. For Sebastian Fundora, high volume, relentless pressure, and an underrated chin overall. Now, he has been dropped quite a few times in his career, but still. When you look at Sebastian Fundora, his biggest thing is he has to control distance. Nobody at 154, and very few boxers as a whole, you have to go up to cruiserweight and heavyweight, can even compare to Sebastian Fundora in terms of a height reach advantage. That's going to have to be his game plan. Keeps Tszyu at bay, and if you do that, you're going to come out there victoriously. However, Fundora's game plan here is to go unify with Charlo after this fight, if possible. Tszyu wants to reclaim his belt and become world champion again. This fight is going to be interesting. And I go back and forth with this one. If you want to call it a 50-50 fight, I'd be okay with that. I feel like this is going to be a very competitive and very close fight tomorrow. If I'm going to be honest with you, I would give the edge to Tszyu in this fight. I like Fundora, but there are a lot of weaknesses and openings in Fundora's game that could allow for victory. And the way that Tszyu fought him in the very first fight prior to the cut led me to the point that I thought Tszyu was going to be able to come out emerge victorious in that fight. Obviously, we don't know what's ever going to happen because he had the gash on his head. But if he has the same game plan, things start to go according to plan without getting a massive cut, I think Tszyu will become world champion once again tomorrow. That's my personal opinion. But let me know in the comments. Who do you guys have between Tszyu, Fundora? I want to know you guys' thoughts on who you guys have winning that fight tomorrow. There was unfortunate news that came out today, though. Angel Fierro was forced to withdraw from his fight against Pitbull Cruz on the Pacquiao Barrios bout due to health issues during his weight cut. Robert Garcia reported that he was taken to the hospital. Things did not go very well. Shout out to Sean Ziddell. He was somebody that came out and said about a month or two ago, this is a guy that does not look like he's ready to fight. He's going to have a tough weight cut. Comes to fruition. He was not ready. Weight cut went bad. But the good news is that Pitbull will now be facing Omar Salcido. He's the guy that got pulled up from the undercard. He was already fighting the same card, so it all worked out. Major props to everybody getting that deal done quickly. If I were to make my quick prediction on that fight, Pitbull Cruz will win it. But it should be a very, very entertaining fight. Not quite the rematch that we were hoping for between Fierro and Pitbull, who potentially have the fight of the year in the first fight. But still, solid fight overall. Hopefully we can see that rematch down the line in the future once again. Let's hop back into some other things about notable fights going on. Just to run through some other fights. A lot of these fights are great fights as well, but since we already discussed a lot of these in depth, I'm just going to get right to it. Lawrence Okolie, Kevin Lorena for Okolie's WBC silver heavyweight title. I have Okolie coming out victorious in that fight, but watch for Lorena. He is a guy that's been competitive and is not a tough out. Daniel Lapin versus Lewis Edmondson. This is going to be for Lapin's the IBF Intercontinental and WBA Continental light heavyweight titles. Very good fight right there. Emma Williams will still be on the card. Not quite the fight it was supposed to be, but he'll be fighting Ivan Vazquez. I think Emma Williams would take good care of him, take him out pretty early. Omar Jones, one of the top rising prospects, as well as Nishant Dev, will also be fighting. Then you have Brandon Figueroa. He's fighting Joet Gonzalez in a very good, entertaining fight there. Gary Russell Jr. will make his return against Hugo Castaneda. Then, super bantamweight Alan Romero fighting Kamita in a very important fight. Once again, I've said this time and time again. With him, Alan Piscasio fighting a Japanese fighter in this fight. The game plan here is for him to grow his name and image in Japan. Hopefully set himself up for a fight in December with Naoya Inoue. That's a hidden behind the lines plan right there, but watch out for that one. And then Mark Magsayo, he's returning against Jorge Mata Cuela. He's going to be making his return as well. Look for a possible rematch between Gary Russell Jr. and Mark Magsayo if they both come out victorious tomorrow. So those are just some of the other notable fights going down on tomorrow's card. But let me know your guys' thoughts. What's the biggest fight going down this weekend? What's your guys' favorite fight? What do you guys wanted to watch? Let me know what you guys think in the chat. I'll make sure to address that when I get back. But I'll be on a short break, and then we'll hop into the second half of the show, which will be breaking down some boxing news going down in boxing right now. I'll see you guys in just a couple of minutes. May God bless you guys all. I'll see you guys shortly. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the SchuZ Show. I'm your host, SchuZ Shoemaker. At this point of the show, it's time to get into some boxing news. Now, if there are any topics you guys want me to address or comments you guys have, make sure to go put them in the chat, and I'll answer them during this portion of the show. Let's start with one thing. Raymond Muratalla. It seems that Robert Garcia has now been angling Raymond Muratalla for unification fight with Shakur Stevenson. I don't like that. It doesn't make a lot of sense, and I want to say that he's ducking Andy Cruz, but at the same time, I feel like that's an improper word to use there because I'm not sure how you'd be ducking Andy Cruz but wanting the Shakur Stevenson fight. So ducking is not the right word there, but confusing certainly is. Why would you want to go out there and fight Shakur Stevenson, Raymond Muratalla? Now, I respect it. It's a good fight. You could probably make a good payday there, but it just doesn't make a lot of sense. You've never fought anyone that's anywhere near that top echelons of guys at 135. Jumping immediately into Shakur Stevenson and unification seems odd. If you were Raymond Muratalla, I'd want to build myself up a little bit. Go get a fight with a guy like Andy Cruz. That's the fight to make. Two guys that are trying to position themselves to be in the upper echelons of guys, and then the winner of that can go ahead, unify with Shakur, whatever. Because if Raymond Muratalla and Shakur Stevenson fight each other, it's just going to be an embarrassing fight for him. Shakur Stevenson will beat him any way he wants. That would not be a competitive fight. I don't really think it'd even be an entertaining fight. It's always cool to watch Shakur go to work, but that's just not a fight to make. Now, Shakur bounced back and said this. He believes Raymond Muratalla is ducking Andy Cruz, says he will still fight Muratalla to unify, but feels he's trying to avoid a tough match with Andy in the meantime. I agree. It just doesn't make sense. Why would you want that? Obviously, payday excluded. Why would Raymond Muratalla really want to fight with Shakur Stevenson right now? It makes no sense. Go out there and fight Andy Cruz, Raymond Muratalla. That's the fight to make. We don't want to see Raymond Muratalla versus Shakur right now. That's not a competitive fight, nor is it a good fight, and it's tough to promote a fight when most people aren't that familiar with Muratalla yet. True boxing fans like myself, yes, I know who he is. I think he's a very good boxer, but he's not ready for Shakur Stevenson. He is much closer in terms of who's ready to fight, like a guy like Andy Cruz, who's a top contender. Go get that fight, and if he has a masterful performance against Andy Cruz, then yes, that would build the hype up to get himself ready to go out there and unify with a guy like Shakur Stevenson. So hopefully we don't see that fight. As Shakur said, he'll take it. If Shakur can unify, I'm sure he'll do it, but it just does not make sense from Muratalla's standpoint. Hopefully that's not what happens. Eddie Hearn says he has been talking to Golden Boy to make Boots Ennis versus Vergil Ortiz around December/February time, and they have already verbally agreed to the fight. Interesting. Vergil Ortiz Sr. bounced back and said this. Vergil Ortiz Sr. bounced back and said this. He denies them and says these are lies. And on top of that, Eddie Hearn then bounced back and said, listen, Vergil was not ready to fight August 16th due to his hand, and we don't need to warm up fights. All right. Can I say this? This entire situation is confusing. When we talk about Vergil Ortiz, he has the injury. Okay, great. If he can't fight until December or next year, whatever it is, that's fine. It is what it is. Stop talking about the fight until then. But the Boots Ennis portion is interesting. We've gone now from needing the tune-up fights to 2 tune-up fights and now no tune-up fights. I don't get it. If you're Boots Ennis, I have no problem with him doing 1 tune-up fight. Most guys when they move up weight classes do some form of a tune-up fight. Sometimes they don't, but for a lot of times that's what they do. If you are Boots Ennis, I have no problem with him doing 1 tune-up fight. 2 is ridiculous. 1's fine with me. But as I've said time and time again, both guys have a very attainable way and path to become world champion within the next year. And if that's the case, why not wait to make this fight when both guys have world championships and you unify? That's, I think, the perfect timing for that fight to happen. If I'm Boots Ennis and Vergil Ortiz, listen, you don't need to fight each other right now. Go ahead, Boots Ennis, and go get your world championship. It should be 2 fights away from yourself, and then you'll be world champion at 154. For Vergil, you are 1, maybe 2 fights maximum away from world champion status at 154 as well. They could both be world champions summertime of next year. And then if we're talking late fall or early winter of 2026, so they can go out there and finally fight each other, that's the perfect situation in my eyes. No point in this back and forth. Like, listen, if the fight's not going to happen for all these different reasons, go become world champions and then make the fight in the future. That's my idea for that fight. Both Gary Antoine Russell and Subriel Matias would like to fight each other next and are exploring the possibility of staging the unification bout. Now, On the same time, let me add this point in. WBC President Mauricio Seulemane, he confirmed in an interview with Bruns Boxing that Alberto Puello has requested a rematch with Subriel Matias. And on top of that, let's not forget that Usyk just about, what was it now, 6 days ago, after the fight, had Dalton Smith come out and face off with Matias. So this next fight for Matias is all over the place. I'm excited to see Matias back in the ring. If I were to make my choice, I want to see the rematch with Alberto Puello. See how that goes down. Let's get one more fight in there. And then the winner of that can go unify or fight Dalton Smith or whatever the case is. I personally think that because of the plan in place, the Gary Antoine Russell fight has no shot at happening. Let's just throw that out there. It would be a fun fight. Don't get that wrong. But it's not going to happen right now. It comes down to these two options. If Alberto Puello has the rematch clause, which he does, and he wants it, that realistically is the path to be taken, unless Usyk pays him to step aside and does something along those lines. And then the Dalton Smith fight can happen. But it comes down to those two options if you're Matias. I would love to see Gary Antoine Russell. I think we could see that in the future. But right now, that fight just does not happen to make a lot of sense. And I feel like right now we're going to see either be Dalton Smith or Alberto Puello, both of which are fine. If it is going to be Dalton Smith for Subriel Matias, I see Subriel Matias easily winning that fight. But that's why I prefer. Out of these realistic options right now, Matias, Puello rematch, run it back later this year. That's the fight to make there. Christian and Billy is to defend his interim WBC super middleweight championship against Hamza Shiraz. WBC President Mauricio Seulemane said in an interview with Brunch Boxing. That's the fight to make. I felt like, and I get it, Usyk loves Hamza Shiraz. He's a great fighter. I love Hamza. I think he's an incredible fighter. But throwing him into the lion's den with Canelo Alvarez right now does not make sense. I don't want to see that fight next. Go get one more fight. This is the one to make. I would say this. This is what I actually said back on Monday. I said, and Billy, Hamza Shiraz, make that fight happen. The winner of that can go fight Canelo Alvarez on the Cinco de Mayo card in 2026. That's perfect. That's the fight to make. If you're Usyk, let that happen. And I think that's a perfect idea right there. And Billy, Hamza Shiraz, two of the top guys at 168. And Billy's a guy that just has not had big fights yet. Not his fault, but he has not been able to go fight on a big stage. And that's why so many casual boxing fans are not as familiar with him as they should be. He's extremely entertaining, very talented, interim world champion. I think one day he will be world champion. That is why this is a big fight to make. If you're talking Billy, Hamza Shiraz, that's massive. Make that fight happen, and the winner gets Canelo Alvarez. That's the way it should be done, in my opinion. Let's head over to the final thing I want to get into and make sure I got all the notes right. Yes, the final thing I'm going to get into on today's show, unless there's any comments on the chat. If there are some comments, make sure to go throw them in the chat, and I will address them before we wrap up today's show. But with that being said, let's get right to it. There's a big fight that has been brewing and is actually already set to happen on November 22nd between Brian Norman Jr. and Devin Haney. All seems to be good. But now we have some issues here. Bill Haney tells Brian Norman Jr. he is no longer interested in the fight unless Brian does Veda testing on vacation. Brian Norman Jr. won't start testing until August 1st, he claims, but Devin Haney and Bill Haney want the testing to start now. All right. I can see both sides on this. I'll make that very clear. I understand. On one side, the Haneys are saying, listen, why not add some more days to your list? Why not just start testing now? All right, fair enough. Why can't you just start testing? Not a big deal. But let's go legally. If this is a situation in place and there's a contract that's already been signed for Veda to start testing on August 1st, then the Haneys need to shut their mouth and let this fight happen. Now, I will say this. Is it a little bit odd why Norman's making such a big deal about not just doing the testing? Sure. It's not that hard to go do the Veda testing, just get it over with. But if this was contractually signed for August 1st to be the date that the testing starts, then the Haneys have no right to change that. If both parties signed off on it, that testing will start August 1st, then the Haneys need to shut down, stop making a big deal about this, and just go out there and be okay with them starting testing on August 1st. That's the end of the story. If that's contractually involved. If there is not contractually involved for that, and there were some open doors in terms of that situation, Brian Norman should just go out there and do it. And let me add one more point to this. If you're Brian Norman Jr., this is a massive fight. In terms of a brand and image name for this fight, Devin Haney is the biggest name going into this fight. Brian Norman's in the best position right now today as world champion, but the biggest name on that fight, in that fight, is Devin Haney. No ifs, ands, or buts. Devin Haney's more accomplished. He has a bigger name, bigger following, so on and so forth. Devin Haney is the biggest draw in that fight. You don't want to pass the opportunity for Brian Norman Jr. Devin Haney will be a tough fight for him. He is far and away more technically sound than Brian Norman Jr., but Brian Norman Jr. does have the equalizer with that hand. He could pull off the knockout. Obviously, we've discussed that, and I'll discuss that more as we lead up to that fight. But if you're Brian Norman Jr., and there's legitimately any possibility that this fight does not happen simply because you will not start testing just a couple of weeks in advance, then you need to seriously just go out there and just do the test. I get it's frustrating. I get it's something that you say, okay, I contractually signed to start August 1st. I'm the world champion. Why am I having to cave into these desires? Listen, this fight is massive for your career. Haney is the biggest name. Don't pass up on this fight simply because of the testing. You should be clean. Hopefully you're not hiding anything. If you're hiding something, that's a big problem. And I see why you're not trying to do it. But hopefully you're clean. And if you are, just go do the testing 10 days earlier. It's not that big of a deal. You and I, everybody knows how easy that testing is. Just start the testing 10 days earlier. Get it done. Don't make a big deal about it. Just make sure that fight happens no matter what. Because if you're Brian Norman Jr., you do not want to pass up any possibility. You don't want to pass up on that fight getting made. Because that's a massive fight for Brian Norman. Because if he is victorious and he possibly KOs Devin Haney in that fight, we are looking at a man that could become an overnight superstar. He's a rising star right now, but that type of KO right there could help him be positioned into superstar status in boxing, or at least a rising superstar. So if you're Brian Norman Jr., you do not want to possibly pass up on this fight. That's my thoughts on the situation. It's messy, it's confusing, but if you're Brian Norman, just go do the testing. Don't make a big deal about it. It is what it is. Make it happen. That's what I want to say on that situation. With that being said, though, I appreciate each and every single one of you guys for tuning in to today's show. I hope you guys have a phenomenally blessed weekend and enjoy the fights tomorrow on July 19th. With that being said, though, I will be back live on Monday to break down the entire card that's going to be going down on all day July 19th. Every fight previewed on today's show will be broken down in entire duration on the show on Monday. So make sure to tune in then. I don't have an exact time yet for that show, but I will announce as we get closer. So I appreciate you guys all for tuning in this whole week. May God bless you guys all. I will see you guys back live on Monday. Enjoy the weekend. God bless you guys all. And with that being said, SchuZ out. Forward to the show. I don't understand that, but breaking news has just come out now. I have to announce it now. Why not wait? Why not just get it done right now while it still was live? It is this, and it just came out. The Ring Magazine just posted it that Riyadh Season and Sayla are considering the option to now stage the Chris Eubank Jr. and Conor Benn rematch in November in London. This is according to Mike Coppinger and Ring Magazine. Eubank Jr. Benn 2 was originally slated for September 20th. All right. I made my statement very clear. I don't think the rematch should happen again. I think the deal should be over with. Both guys can go separate ways and make themselves happy in terms of 168 for Chris Eubank, 147 or 154 for Conor Benn. But I always will have said this point. I understand the massive payments that can be in store for both guys if they do the rematch. And at the end of the day, these guys are in it for the money. If that's the situation that we're going to go after, this fight makes the most sense. I don't think it's the wisest choice to make, but it makes sense as to why they want to make that fight happen. Now, it appears that Riyadh Season and Ring Magazine is potentially open to having this fight go down once again. They pulled out of it supposedly this past week. They're supposedly back interested in it, and for it to go down in November. This is probably a lot of moving storylines. Hopefully, we have more clarity on it on Monday, but that's what I wanted to say. I just want to hop back live real quick and give you guys an update on that. With that being said, though, now I hope you guys all have a very blessed weekend. Hope you guys are all have a great weekend. As I said, may God bless you guys all. SchuZ is out now. Great. Enjoy the fight July 19th. And with that being said, God bless you guys. SchuZ is out for real. See you guys on Monday.